thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Connor Fowler.
And I'm Matt Smith.
And you are now listening to Apocalypse Duds, a guerrilla clothing show about how we counter and endure capitalism's grip in these turbulent times. Today we are joined by Peter Toatley, at Peter Toatley, tattooer at Don Pietro Tattoo, hashtag Suburban Dad, Plaid Proponent, Tweed Enthusiast, Sopranos Super Fan, Zen Master. How are you doing today, Peter?
Oh, cheers. I'm doing great.
Yeah. How's the weather?
We are happy to have you on the show.
Yeah, man.
Great to be here.
Stoked to be chatting with you. And how
Baltimore, as a Baltimore head, do you get the brash tweed impertinence? The brash tweed impertinence line?
Is that from The Wire?
Yeah, that's when the guy tells Beatty that they work plain clothes. And you can go for the pinstripe lawyerly affectations of Mr. Moreland or the brash tweed impertinence of Lester Freeman.
Nice.
Yeah. Yes. No, and here's an insane thing. Listen, I lived in Clark Peters' house in Baltimore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was crazy. My partner at the time was working for the Mark Steiner Show, which is a large public radio show here in Baltimore. Okay. And he knew Clark Peters very well. And Clark, for whatever reason, allowed us to live in this house. And that was the house that they all lived in. So I had Sonia Sone's bed. She just had left it in the house. Yeah. So there was all this artwork that they had done down there, just like getting wasted and shooting the show and then like coming home and getting wasted some more and making artwork. So yeah, that's a weird Baltimore fact about myself. 3005 North Albert Street.
Wow.
Yeah. This makes blasphemous.
Yeah, I feel absolutely dunked on.
No, I don't mean to dunk on you. I don't mean to dunk. I just mean to say, here is this information.
Yeah.
That's really great. As also a Wire super fan, that's like too much for me.
What's funny is
recently watched it.
Yeah, I've never seen it, and I've never seen The Sopranos, so I'm the blasphemous one here. I know.
I'm jealous of you.
Dude,
a little bit.
Go back to that state.
I just end up watching the same 6 things over and over again because I'm a creature of habit in that. The Sopranos are definitely, like, I've been told 1,000 times, oh, you need to watch this show. And I'm like, yeah, I'll get to it eventually. And that eventually is...
I'm going to get him.
It's impossible to resist, I feel like. Somebody's like, you have to watch this. And then the natural thing is you're like, well, oh, do I? Is that what you think?
Yeah. I mean, like, it's kind of like when someone recommends a band and you're like, oh, they sound like so-and-so. And you're like, cool, I'll just listen to so-and-so instead of listening to this shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, both shows seem so up my alley, too, because I love that shit. But I've just never done it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Connor's going to kill me if I don't watch The Sopranos.
Yeah. I'm going to get Matt to watch The Sopranos.
It's an institution, man. It's a...
I mean... I love James Gandolfini and other stuff, and I know that like that's
like a wild thing to say. Like
I know.
Watch this. Love Gandolfini and everything he's done.
Yeah, in the handful of things that I've seen him in, but for whatever reason, I don't know. I just I don't know. It's kind of like I was talking to some friends a couple of weeks ago, and they were just watching Mad Men for the first time. And which like that's a show that I can watch basically anytime, like I
can't get
which is another Matthew Weiner production
where he's talking like the waiter. I can't like get past that scene. I'm like, this show is killing me, man.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a return to a bad time for like non-white people.
Yeah, so. Is that what it is? Is that what it is? Maybe
I think
so.
Well,
it's like I'm pretty sure. There's like you can count the black characters on your hand. Right?
You know what's crazy is I feel like I can watch stuff like that when there's no black people in it, but then you put a black person in, and I'm like, I'm not watching this. Like I can watch
Yeah.
Downton Abbey, and I'm like, this is
Hmm.
crazy. There's not even black people on this planet essentially until like the fourth season or something.
Right.
But I can watch that, but yeah, Mad Men 5 minutes. I was like, I don't this dynamic maybe I don't know. Man. And also, I feel like that's a period of clothing I don't really connect to as much either. That kind of like 50s, 60s. Like a 60s style, I'd be more like looking at like counterculture style as like something cool to
Yeah.
wear versus
Yeah.
like
When I
not
go
just
on.
that- yeah, I'm not gonna be like, oh, look at that, like, quintessential like office man who's like, abusing women and like mistreating the world. I'm not like checking his style necessarily like a dope.
Yeah.
Especially
Well, and
not,
it's in retrospect, like it's fucked up. That's when I came up
yeah.
in the like menswear scene was Mad Men. Like that was the
Right?
entire time in
Uh-huh.
2010, 2009, what have you. And
Right?
like it was a glorification of alcoholism
Yeah.
in a bad way. Like of course the story of Don Draper is one of an alcoholic who has a sort of descent.
Yeah.
Um but it's everyone, as always, took the wrong
That's the wrong
message
cue.
from it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
I mean,
just
that's
think that
that's always
that's
like the kind of the danger
Hey,
double to the Sopranos,
he's
you know?
back.
Like, what parts are you enjoying this? And why are you enjoying this part?
Right. They're not
But
like idols. They are a cautionary tale.
yeah, it's interesting because I think that is kind of around when I kind of got into maybe dressing more in this style, but I was so turned off by Mad Men that I kind of was never in. I could never get into that aspect of it.
So
Like,
you got sort of started around then too, because this basically leads into the questioning here.
yeah,
Um,
it's hard to say. I can say that I have kind of always been a person who was interested in outfits people wear, for
mhm.
certain in clothes that I wear, definitely it definitely took different shapes over the years,
oh yeah.
depending on what like kind of youth counterculture you're into at that
So like,
moment.
what were you wearing when you were growing up? What were you wearing?
Like growing up, like as a little kid, I think when you look at pictures,
Little
it
to
is
big.
kind of very, very preppy,
Hmm.
because I think that was kind of like my dad's style, like there's pictures of me just like in a polo shirt and like literally like saddle shoes and like corduroy shorts
Nice.
and
Nice.
like,
It's a great
I
outfit.
mean,
like, I would wear that. I would wear that today.
and it
That's
fits
tight,
with your New England upbringing, so
Yeah, even though my dad was from Philadelphia,
okay.
but he was kind of like ran ahead of the times type guy. Like my dad, like went to I forget what the art school is. That's like maybe not I don't want to say the wrong one. He went to art school in Pennsylvania in like the 60s. He got some kind of scholarship where he went overseas to Europe and like traveled all around and like
Wow.
was like riding
That's
a
a big deal
Vespa.
in the 1960s. I guess it's a
In
big
the
deal
60s.
anytime.
Yeah, anytime in the 1960s, yeah. And like I can remember my godfather, his best friend, talking about how when he came back, he rode a Vespa around Philadelphia, and he had a giant air sweater that he got in Ireland that he would put on in like the dead of winter and zip around Philadelphia on this Vespa. And that was kind of like the image of my father. My father passed away when I was really young.
Oh shit.
And so there's all these stories of this, you know, his kind of cool exploits. I think that is a
Yeah.
big influence on my style in general. In him dressing me when I was young, he came from a family of like real like clothes horses. I can remember his
Yeah.
aunt, my great aunt, when we would go to Philadelphia, she would take us to, oh my god, a department store called Wanamaker's, and like she'd buy us like overcoats when we were like 7 years old. Something that's gonna fit you for like 6 months. But I can remember
Yeah.
having like a long wool overcoat and like, you know, navy blazer, gray trousers, you know. Again, stuff I own today.
Right,
So
yeah. It all comes back, I think. Like, you know,
yeah.
it
So I think that comes on both sides of my family, kind of close horses. Like I still have a pair of like wool pants that was like my grandfather's that my mom wore for like 20 years and then like gave to me.
that's awesome. Yeah,
So, you know, everybody on both sides of my family is kind of freaks like that about clothes a bit.
that's hella cool,
It's
man.
a good way to
Oh,
be.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, that was a great. Yeah, that's a great bit of information, really.
yeah. So
Yeah, so I think that's really formative to me. Well, that kind of it comes from my family, really, an interest in like clothes and like an interest in clothes made of good material and an interest in clothes that you're gonna buy and you're gonna have and you're
it's
gonna
always funny how that
because I
shows
think
up
my
later
family's kind
too.
of yeah, and they're both like that on both sides about everything. You know, like I have pieces of furniture in my house right now that were from my grandparents on both sides. You know, just like antiques
Yeah.
that are passed through the family. Um, yeah, so that's how
And
we
was there
are.
a like a prioritization on production too?
What do you mean production?
So like where something comes from.
That comes from my mom. Oh my god. You know,
Uh-huh.
that's my mom's generation. My mom's like a real like super 60s artist hippie type person. Like
Hell yeah.
I always joke that I get like anxiety from the smell of like a health food store, you know, like the smell of like and like wood and stuff. It makes me like
Yeah.
I gotta eat like a Twinkie after that or a Swiss roll or something. Um, so yeah, my mom is definitely on that ethical consumption side. That's kind of I guess another aspect of the way I dress because I kind of tend to, if I can, get things secondhand. You know, I will buy new stuff, and I do buy fucking luxury goods here and there, but you know, it's
Yeah.
all based on. It is based on production, where it's made, how it's made. Um, yeah, how long it's gonna last, really.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's for me has been a like there's this idea I can't remember who wrote the Tyranny of the Boot. You familiar with this? It's like an
No,
early socialist text. I think that's what it's called. But the point being like poor people are forced to buy like boot a shitty boot after year after
yeah,
year after year after year after year, and like a wealthy person can buy a pair of boots that literally is going to last them for their entire life,
yeah,
and to
exactly.
boot, haha, they have more than one pair of shoes.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it really comes to it comes back to the old chestnut of capitalism.
Yeah, yeah.
um
Just it's expensive to be poor.
Oh yeah, it definitely
yeah.
is. And you know, even
Yeah.
with like secondhand shopping now too, in the
Oh
modern
god.
time,
That's
like, you know, thrift stores are taxing like, you know, 30-40 bucks on something that,
yeah, it's
yeah,
insane.
like it's wild. You know, like I sell vintage clothing as my business, and you know, sometimes
Mhm.
it's like you always hear the argument of like, oh, you're taking stuff out of poor people's, you know, mouths or whatever, and it's like, no, like literally they can't afford to buy this shit because it's $40 and they could go to Walmart and get it for
Yeah, yeah.
10. So, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
just kind of weird.
Yeah, somehow in the last like 5 years, like vintage and like thrift stores, it's like not thrift stores so much, I guess, but like vintage has become luxury.
Right. Right.
You know, suddenly
Oh my
they.
god, yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm,
mean, you know, there's
I'm.
there's certain things that have always been expensive, but like, you
Oh, I
know,
think so. For sure.
sell it's like, oh yeah, like this thing that there were millions of made, like, you know, a t-shirt for example that I might sell for 20 bucks. It's like some store in
Yeah.
LA or New York is selling it for like 70 or 80, and it's like, yo, that's not like, that kind of defeats the
What?
point to me in a lot of ways. Like, you know, it
But then again, now we have like this. Oh God, I'm gonna sound so old. The generation of people who think that's fucking all
right.
good. They're just like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
fucking banjo. from like, but it's not even that old, you know. It's like from like the fucking
Oh yeah,
90s, and they're like, it's like $70. I'm like, I fucking might have that
right,
shit.
dude.
You
I
know?
mean, if I could go back in time and buy all the $5
Oh,
clearance shit
God.
at Hot Topic and like Media Play and Sam
Oh my
Goody and shit when I was growing up, like I'd be a millionaire. You know, like oh cool,
it's
bunch of heart shaped box Nirvana T-shirts for
I was like trying to collect things, you know, like maybe like people were at that time when I was like a teenager. It seemed like comic books and action figures you were gonna like, you know, that was like Bitcoin back
right.
then, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I mean, I did
We're
sports
like,
cards, which are worth
we like,
nothing.
yeah, I'm gonna like show how fucking old I am, but there was like the beginning of like Mirage Studios, I think is what it was called, and it was like these superhero comics, and they were just selling, and it was like, oh, these are gonna be worth something, and all these action figures that went around, like the McFarlane stuff, like the Spawn and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Right? Yeah.
It,
Hmm.
oh, it's gonna be worth money. Like I knew guys that were like had boxes, cases of these action figures and shit, and I was like, damn, am I fucking stupid? Like, but now shit. You know, it's just like that cycle didn't fucking turn out to be worth
Oh,
shit.
dude, yeah.
But like the shirt that I was wearing when I was looking at that box of fucking clothes that I like used to like clean a car and like left at an apartment somewhere in Boston is like worth like $70 now.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got like 100,000 baseball cards in the closet of my parents' house that aren't worth the paper they're printed on at this point. You know,
Oh yeah,
just like okay, cool,
is it to like put some wall there or something?
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
What?
it's one.
So, Peter, what part of Rhode Island did you grow up in?
I grew up in southern Rhode Island, so almost in Connecticut.
Okay,
In
I'm pulling
really
up a map.
kind of rural, really properly rural community at that
gotcha.
time when I grew up there. It's a little less backwater now, but I mean, I don't know. I think people still are proudly backwater down there.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I'm from the
Yeah,
same kind of town, so I get it.
okay, yeah, they're keep it country.
Yeah. And you
And
just mentioned
far,
Boston. Did you live there for a while too?
yeah, I lived in Boston from when I was about 19 till I was maybe like 25 or 26.
Okay, nice. What part of
Yeah.
Boston?
I lived in Alston,
Oh, hell yeah.
which is yeah,
Yeah, I've always enjoyed that.
Alston, yeah, as it's called. But yeah, kind of like on the Boston University, BC kind of campus kind of area.
Nice. Did you eat a lot of Spike's hot dogs?
No, Spikes. You know what's weird is as a Rhode Islander,
Is that the vegan hot dog place?
it's more of a Rhode Island thing.
Oh yeah, it is a Rhode Island
Um,
thing too. I always forget about that.
yeah, I almost didn't even think of it as a Boston thing. Nah, we were eating a lot of, I don't know, Thai food at that time.
I gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Every time I went to
No.
like when I was in bands and we'd play Boston, you know, stay in like Alston or like Jamaica Plain or something. Like
Okay,
Spike's was
yeah,
always
yeah.
just one of those spots where we had to hit.
Okay, yeah, it's right. That's the neighborhood I grew up in, right on that
Oh
street.
hell yeah.
Um, yeah, that's awesome. And you played in bands that toured through Boston. Like what time? When? What years?
Like 2000. I was in a couple of bands that played up there, like 2006 to 9, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah, we played Haverhill a lot too, and
I still knocking around the streets at that time.
oh, dude, yeah, I would imagine since you were into hardcore, like we probably know some of the same people at some point, like you know.
Yeah, right. And you're from where?
I'm from Atlanta.
Okay, Atlanta.
Yeah,
Okay.
my
See, I haven't made it that far in hardcore myself. I think I tour managed a indie rock band, and we toured the South at one time.
what band was it?
It was a band called the Beatings. And yeah, we played a show in Marietta. They played a show in
At
Marietta.
Swayze's. Do you remember the venue?
Oh god, the club. You know what I do remember from that though? That was really amazing. There was a fucking barber shop. I would been on tour like from like California through like Texas, Arizona, fucking all through the South. We're like coming up through Marietta, Georgia, and my hair was just like out of control. And like next to the venue, there was a a barbershop called Furious Styles.
Oh
And Furious
yeah.
Styles is the father in Boys in the Hood, the Larry Fishburne character.
Yeah. I'm
Like,
I'm nearly
I'm
positive.
in my head at this motherfucker for sure.
That's awesome.
And I remember that so this band I was touring with, I'm the only black person in this van, right, touring through the South. Um, and the drummer from the band goes into this black barbershop with me and he sits down, he's gonna get a haircut, but it's just taking forever. You know, we're like in there 30 minutes, we're in there 40 minutes, it's like an hour. He's like, I can't do it, I gotta go. And they're but at one point they're like asking him about the band, and they're like, what's it called? And he's like, The Beatings. And like, you've never seen like a room full of like 7 black men like recoil so hard all in unison. And they're like,
Oh my
we don't
god.
like those here. And he's like, well, it's more like the beatings of a heart, you know, like
Right. At that point, there's no recovering from this shit.
years, man. Oh my god, I'll never forget that as long as
That's a hell of a
a great
story.
haircut.
Oh, I bet, dude.
Fantastic.
What was the venue in like a little strip mall kind of thing?
I think it was.
Yeah, it was a venue called Swayze's. I don't know if it's still around, but like it was. Yeah, that was one of the like when the scene quote unquote was outside the outside the city in the suburbs. That was like
Yeah.
one of the best venues that
Yeah.
everybody played.
Oh wow, that's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of venues in the South on that tour. I can't. Amazing things.
Oh, I bet, dude.
On that tour. Oh, one more tour story from that tour. All right. Because we're
Oh,
talking about
hit it,
clothes.
dude. I love this shit.
The Beatings are like playing this show, right? Oh god, I can't remember where we were. I feel like we were in like Kentucky or something. But anywhere we're like playing this, they're playing this show, and like one person leaves like right out of the bar. It's not like a super huge room. They're playing another song, like 5 people leave, 10 people leave, like 30 people leave. The bartender at one point they're playing on the stage. I'm standing in the crowd with like 2 people. The bartender looks at them, folds up like the side of the bar like he's gonna run out, and he's like, they're blowing up the bridge, and he runs out the fucking bar.
What?
And we out of the bar onto the street, and a fucking demolition happens. They blow up some bridge like in the middle of downtown on like a Saturday night. There's like hundreds of people in the street. There's this huge explosion, kind of like calamity, people screaming and stuff. Everybody comes back in the bar and they're like, start again, and they start the set over again.
Holy
Like,
shit.
and it was like the livest show after
Yeah,
that.
that's absolutely ridiculous.
Blow up, you know, they're fucking ready to party.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, man. Ah.
All right, so back to clothes and politics.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, it's all interconnected, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, like
But yeah, I grew up in the hardcore scene, kind of here in Rhode Island. Was at the time in the 1995 or something. It
Oh,
was
shit.
fucking real strong. I can remember when I was in middle school. You know, there's kind of like an awkward transition to high school. Like you're friends with certain people in middle school, and you switch to high school, and like suddenly you don't know anybody, but it's all the same people in your school.
right.
And
Mhm.
this kid Tim, I can remember him literally coming up to me in the hall and like basically seizing me by the arm, like seeing my confusion at this social dynamic change and being like, "You're gonna hang out with us." And I was like, "What?" And it was like this hardcore kids.
Oh, fuck yeah.
And that was it. Like it was like that weekend they took me to like my first show. It was this band Chokehold's last show.
Oh,
They're
fuck.
like a V band from like somewhere in Canada.
Yeah, Chokehold's one of my favorite bands. So.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That was the first show I ever went to, man. That was the first time I
Oh
was
my
ever at a
God.
hardcore show. It was at this thing called the New Bedford Fest.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
aunt ran the YMCA where they held that show. It was in a 2-story gymnasium. So like the show was like on the basketball court, but there was people as Chokehold was playing launching themselves from the fucking balcony above the basketball court. Fucking crowd. I'd like never seen like anything fucking like this in my life. I was like, what the fuck is going? I'd never seen people like mosh. You know,
Right.
I can remember this dude, like running around with like his hand on top of his head, like he was kind of like a cross between like a punk rocker with like Liberty spikes and like a rooster,
Oh yeah.
and just kind of like scanning around as like guys are like throwing fists. You know, like it looks like they're trying to knock people out. It's like karate kicks and fucking. I'd never seen anything like it. I was like, this is nuts.
Yeah.
But I think I like it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it. I was like straight edge, hardcore kid. I remember that day I bought a t-shirt that was like a big, giant, extra large white t-shirt, and on the front it said straight edge, and it had a picture of like a hand and like the Vulcan, like Vulcan like
right.
X on it on the back, and it said live like straight edge, live long and prosper.
Nice.
I've never
Wow.
wished a piece of clothing still so bad in my fucking life. That was the first hardcore t-shirt I ever bought. I wish I fucking
Oh, I bet,
Oh
man.
my god.
Are you still are you still Edge also?
No,
Oh, okay.
no,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
no.
I made it 10
It'd be tough to work in the weed fields.
I mean, dude,
Yeah, no,
I've known plenty of straight edge bartenders and otherwise, so you never know. You know.
no,
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I know a bunch of
no,
sober bartenders, so
It's got me through high school.
Yeah. I made it like
yeah.
10 years, like 15 to 25.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was. I mean, it was kind of a perfect thing, you know. It's like you look back, I'm like, would I have lived through high school if I wasn't straight?
Right, yeah.
Like I was who were against drugs and alcohol, but we were doing fucking crazier shit than fucking anyone. And our parents were like, because they knew we were not drinking and doing drugs, they were like, oh, it must be fine.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, we were like driving around like greater New England, you know, like to shows at like leaving at like 1 o'clock in the morning from some show, coming back, going to high school the fucking next day.
Oh, dude, yeah. Absolutely. Or like me and my friends were shooting fucking fireworks at each other and shit. And it's like, oh, cool. We're not drinking, but we might blow each other up. So
it's not a good idea what you're doing.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Peter, you're a little older than I am. I'm 38 and kind of like started going to shows, I don't know, a few years after, like 95 or whatever. But
Okay.
how did the kind of like coming up in the scene and the whole straight edge like vibe, for lack of a better word, like how did that start to or I guess a better way to put it, did you kind of feel like that was informing, you know, your opinion of like dressing and style? Or
You know what's funny is I still think I kind of had the same seeds of style through that period still.
Yeah.
Because you can look back and I'll be like in like, you know, like, because it was like big jeans and like running sneakers and
what kind of running sneakers?
belt kind of thing was like very important, and then like, you know, I don't like some kind of hardcore t-shirt, but I was also, you know, have like a rugby shirt on still,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
Crew neck sweater still. It was like there's always like a vein.
Yeah.
Like same thing running through there. But yeah, it's
and that's
interesting.
punk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think to incorporate like Ivy style shit into a punk outfit, like that is a punk action.
Oh yeah, I think so. It's kind of like more punk, right? Like that's
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah,
it's like
I would agree
wearing
entirely.
wearing a tie.
back in the
Yeah, all of
day.
that kind of stuff.
And the most punk guy is the guy who's like in like a polo shirt and like
Right.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
he's
dude,
like the kind of
like look at the Clash, you know, like that, like
yeah,
dudes like
exactly.
that, or even like the two-tone ska shit, like, you know, skinny black tie,
Yeah.
you know, like plaid blazer and chucks or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, like
I think I like style kind of tightened up a little more when I was like when I was living in Boston. I started DJing like soul and like reggae.
oh hell yeah.
I got into the dance hall for a few years. We were like, you know, every weekend at some kind of like heavy Jamaican dance hall show, like reggae show kind of thing. And I would DJ maybe like a skinhead night here and there, and I would DJ the soul night here and there. And I got really heavy into that style, and that kind of that was where really I got a little more like maturely tuned into like okay, I'm not gonna dress like a complete slob like all the fucking time.
Right.
But what's interesting though is what's interesting is I started to kind of tighten it up then, but then I got into rock climbing, and me, got really into like backcountry hiking and like rock climbing, like super hardcore. Like we were like very serious into rock climbing. Like we were like we got to the point where it was like either we had to like quit our jobs and like get a van and like move to Yosemite, or we kind of had to like move on from rock climbing.
Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what does that look like? What does being very serious about rock climbing look like? But
It was
I think that's
intense,
a good
you know, but
answer.
it was like I was always in like jeans. But I would almost always climb in like a pair of khakis.
Oh
So
my
it's
God!
kind of like
Yeah.
very preppy.
That
But that's the
Yeah,
thing
seriously.
with rock climbing is it's kind of like it's very like preppy adjacent, because people that have the time to do something as luxurious as rock climbing, you know, come from some means, you
right.
know,
Yeah.
because
Oh
rock
yeah.
climbing is you know, maybe bouldering you could just kind of like start thrashing around anywhere you could find a rock, but rock climbing is like gear intensive and like skill intensive. You gotta spend some fucking time. And so
Yeah.
when we would go rock climbing in and around Boston, it was all like people from like MIT and fucking Harvard that we would run into. Or we were like really outliers because we were just like two guys that like worked in Boston.
Right.
They were like, "Oh, you go to MIT?" We'd be like, "Nah, I work down the street."
I mean, I feel like the khaki
But
thing kind of plays into like the OG, you know, Patagonia, like 70s mountaineering kind of shit
yeah,
too.
oh yeah. Well, that's the thing is like people it is yeah, and it's interesting because right because those people who first rock climbed were just rock climbing in their
Right.
clothes that they had
Yeah,
on.
there was nothing made
It was
for
just
that.
yeah, it was utilitarian. Okay, these khakis are kind of old. I'll wear that. This sweater will keep me warm. And you look back at old pictures of rock climbers and they look fucking
Oh,
dope.
yeah, hell yeah.
But it's just they were just kind of piling on clothes until they were like protected and warm enough or cool enough,
Right.
and it worked out. But when I started my tattoo apprenticeship, I was like living in Boston at the time. I like started getting tattooed a lot. A friend of mine tattooed, but he lived in Kansas City, Missouri, which I'd really never like set foot in before. I went out there and got tattooed by him like maybe like once or twice, and like met the people at that shop, and I was like kind of like just like kind of mesmerized by tattooing at that point. I was like, holy fuck. I was like, these guys just fucking hang out and fucking draw and fucking they're living, they're thriving.
Dude. Yeah.
What the fuck is the secret here? And again, I was like getting tattooed a lot, and like I remember like calling my friend Andrew. I was like talking to him about tattooing, and he was like, "Well, you're not gonna learn to tattoo in Boston." And I was like, "Huh." I like called him back like a couple weeks later. I was like, "I'm moving to Kansas City," and he was like, "Oh, I guess you're gonna learn to tattoo."
Hell yeah.
And then I moved to Kansas City. I'm like apprenticing at this tattoo shop. I mean, I think I like lived there for like a year first, where they were just like, to be a tattoo apprentice, you know, the owner of the shop was like, you have to work as a, have you ever worked as a server in a restaurant? And I was like, no. He was like, to be a tattooer, you have to work as a server in a restaurant for like at least a year before I can even like consider giving you this job. You got to learn how to work with people you don't fucking aren't working that aren't working with you energetically. You got to fucking learn how to serve people, you know? So I was working at a restaurant for like a year. And in that time, I was still, that was toward the end of when I was, we didn't even hit the trim scene shit yet. So this is kind of toward the tail end of that. And I remember my friend Andrew saying offhand to somebody else, like, you know, Peter's cool. He kind of dresses like he's always about to go camping. Huh. And that was like the moment the like impetus to where I don't ever go into the tattoo shop basically without a shirt with buttons on
Yeah.
it. Like low level, maybe like a polo, like a tennis shirt.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I was kind of like, oh, I'm like a black dude. I'm starting to get a lot of fucking tattoos. I have dreadlocks. I smell like weed all the time. Something working for me here. So I can just dress like super preppy, like somebody's dad, some New England dad, and then I at least have some sort of plausible deniability for fucking something,
Right.
you know?
And that's your Instagram hashtag, right? Suburban dad, hashtag
Yeah,
suburban dad. And now
But what's
you
crazy
literally are the suburban
before,
dad.
I was a suburban dad, you know? And people used to make fun of me. Not make fun of me. I don't know. Not fully make fun of me. But they'd be like, oh, you dress like a dad. You dress like dorky like a dad. And I was like, yeah, that's the whole point.
Right.
And now that I am a dad, I just like, you know, I'm just in my natural state.
Yeah. It all came full circle in some weird way.
Right?
Yeah.
It all works.
I mean, it's so funny
So
too.
you say, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's really funny, like, you know, to think about what you just said about you always wearing like a button-up shirt or like a collared shirt of some sort, because, you know, tattooing historically was like, you know, really gruff fucking, you know, meathead kind of looking people, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna take this and turn it on its head. Like, I'm gonna, you know, I want to look respectable and to, like, you know, set myself apart a little bit, whether consciously or not.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man, that's rad.
Is it's like if you look back, that's like tattooing, you know, from like 60s to the 90s,
Right,
you
right.
know. But before that, it was just like tattooers were just some guy, you know, and they just dressed like whatever,
Right.
you know, like a normal guy. So when you look at tattooers before like the 1960s, before like really like that kind of biker culture kind of
Right, yeah.
element came, they're just like a guy in like suspenders and like a shirt with buttons and
Yeah.
rolled up sleeves. So that guy has tattoos.
Yeah, they just kind of look like they just, you know, came off a sailor, like a naval ship or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of, I feel like that kind of the kind of like this is what a tattooer looks like kind of in general kind of thing is like kind of, you know, 60s, 70s.
Right, yeah.
80s. I mean, not that it's not true, but yeah. Yeah, I know it's interesting, you know. And then style and tattooing is such a fucking bizarre thing too, you know. It's like you gotta wear like it's just like basically just a legion of dudes in black t-shirts, you know.
Yep.
And yeah, that's also kind of why I dress the way I do. Is it's like it's such a I don't know, it's so homogenous tattooing in a way. You know, it's like an industry where it's like there's more like women tattooing than like, you know, black dudes, you know.
Right. Oh, totally.
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, so it's an interesting thing, and then it is so like there's like one style. It's kind of like everybody's kind of dressed like a giant 12-year-old, you know, on some level. And so I couldn't really get with that either, you know, like that can't be me, like, you know. I'm not trying to I don't know, wear shorts past my knees to work.
Right, yeah.
I don't even wear shorts to work if I can avoid it. But yeah, I don't know. But that's just the inherent punk rock resistant fucking
Oh, totally.
asshole child in me. In any situation, I'm like, oh, you guys dress like this? Well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about your tattooing style, because we looked at the page before the interview and we were both extremely impressed. So I was wondering how you came to that. You said you were drawing as a young person,
Yeah.
artist parents,
Yeah.
but I'm wondering how you kind of came into it yourself.
I like I said, I was getting tattooed a lot. I used to work in film production in the Boston area, and like I just was like, oh, in 15 years, am I gonna like want to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to be on set somewhere or like work in this warehouse? And I was like, it can't be me. I don't know if I was right in retrospect.
Yeah, we all make those choices.
Yeah, but that's how I got into tattooing. And as far as developing a style as a tattooer, if from my perspective, I'm like, I don't think I do have a style. Jesus. I think it just comes from the people that I learned to tattoo from. There was a guy, Scott, that I worked with that's just like kind of like the ultimate American traditionalist. Like, he can kind of bake anything down to its like most basic needed form and just like make this beautiful tattoo out of it. The guy Andrew who got me into tattooing, he's kind of like toward that American traditional style, but with like a kind of wilder style and like a lot of like more detail to it. I worked for a guy in Providence for a long time, a really talented tattooer, Dennis, who just is like kind of a master of like line work, like super fine line work, and just like black and white. Just doesn't ever do a tattoo in color, and it's mainly just a texture of lines. There's like shading a little bit, and mostly black, and huge influence on me. Mainly, and these are all people who just kind of like had like not so much Scott, but just had like unreasonable demands of me in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you just become like self-conscious, and maybe that becomes like a style because you do the same thing over and over, and it is okay looking, and people like it, and that kind of becomes a style. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
no, that's a good answer. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that's also something Dennis that I used to work for would say. He would say, hey, if you make the same mistake over and over again and it looks good, then that's your style.
Interesting. So, just out of curiosity, Peter, how many shops have you worked for? Like, since you
many, I think for a tattooer, I worked at the Mercy Seat in Kansas City. I worked for a shop in Ukiah, California. And then I worked for Providence Tattoo in Providence, and now I work at Anchor Steam in Newport. So only 4.
Damn, that's awesome.
Which is exceptionally short list, I think, for a tattooer. Honestly.
Yeah. That was something that Connor and I had talked about. Is like, I feel like most tattoo artists take a while to like find their home, and it's like, they'll bounce around to a shop for a year or two and go to another one. But that's gnarly. You like kind of found that so quick.
Yeah, the first shop I worked at was kind of like a real like. I mean, they brought me into it. That's like the family.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and then the first shop was just kind of like, what do you call that? Is that your journeyman phase? Your first job.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Providence is really where I like kind of had to like get it together and become a real tattooer, or it wasn't gonna work. And
so I was going to shift to the next bit of this here, and I was going to ask you about Hunter Thompson, a mutual person that we share.
So interesting. And I pointed that out because I wouldn't even say that was like a style influence. When I look at it, I'm like, fuck, you know what?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Basically my whole fucking personality.
I looked at your fits and I was like, oh, there it is, right there. And then you post
like Black Austin, I get it.
To our listeners, Peter has posted this Thompson quote every New Year's Eve for some years running now. I'm going to pull the quote just so that everyone can know what we're talking about here. Hunter Thompson, journalist. The police determine who whoops it up on New Year's Eve '99 and who doesn't. Law enforcement wisdom anticipates chaos, curfews, and riots. Criminals will run amok. Misinformed SWAT teams will attack the guilty and innocent alike. Professional advice says stay home, lock doors, douse lights, don't answer the phone. Happy New Year. Right?
Real poetry. Yeah, you know what's
Absolutely.
funny is 100 Thompson is totally a real style influence because I think so two things when I went to the second college I went to Montserrat College of Art at first, and
Hmm.
I transferred to University of Connecticut, and I had a professor, Shane Teeter. God bless him. He's probably the reason for all my fucking problems. Best way possible.
Shane.
Best professor you could have. We had like four texts I can that we used in the class I can remember. The the Death of Superman comic book. Oh no, wait. The Killing Joke? No, it was yeah, no, wait. What's the Frank Miller Batman? Dark Knight. The Frank
Yeah.
Miller Batman, it's a Dark Knight. So we read that. Darkness on the Edge of Town, the Springsteen album.
Hmm.
Solid.
And I guess I can only come up with three. Black Elk Speaks was like the third one. So I read Black Elk Speaks, and in that, it's like the story of this like young Native American kind of coming up during like sort of like maybe like I mean really in the heat of maybe like the like Trail of Tears kind of period, just like
Hmm.
brutalization of Native Americans. But it's also him coming up in like this spirituality. So it's a lot about like having visions and like sweat lodges and stuff. And that kind of thing captured my mind, right? So I remembered I read Siddhartha, and then I had to I wrote a paper for that class about that. And I kind of got into like kind of Eastern spirituality, like real hard. That's when I got a little more into meditation and stuff. I got into Thich Nhat
Yeah.
Hanh, and I really fucking, what do you say, turned on, tuned in, and fucking dropped out.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I at some point saw Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and I was like, what the fuck? And then I read like what a Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, and
Yeah.
like I just got like deep into Hunter Thompson, and I was like, what? And then again I noticed like he was like this guy who was just doing like the gnarliest shit, but he was dressed in like the most like innocuous way, you know? He just looked like some like blue blood from fucking wherever.
Right. Well, he was a prep too.
Yeah, like like
You
hyper.
know, like the short shorts, the minimal sneakers, the kind of
Yeah,
preppy army man. He's going hunting, maybe he's going fishing, he's going to the country club.
yeah, and like really about it, you know, really living that life, but at the same time, really being like about some different politics.
Oh, totally.
Because you know Newman Street, right? Newman
What's that?
Street Vintage.
Yeah.
He just got that hunter coat, which
Oh,
is
really?
like something that I mean, I knew that it existed. I didn't know, like, having seen it on him in pictures, I didn't know that it was a consumer good.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was made by Abercrombie
He
and
has
Fitch.
one. He just got one.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
isn't that insane?
Yeah.
That's
I
wild.
thought that thing was fucking custom.
Yeah, me too.
Nah, dude, they were selling that shit in the 60s and early 70s. You know, when they were still a safari outfitter. Like, it's kind of wild just to like think about that was a good that was sold on a mass scale.
Right. Yeah. Amazing.
You said they cost like 4 G's, Matt?
Yeah, I would assume somewhere between 3 and 4 retail at this point.
Like now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it was like $25 or something back in the day. It was, you know, it was probably all made of scraps. It's also hilarious to me that like that Hunter S. Thompson is the like poster child for that exact jacket. When it's like, oh, he was just, you know, he was just a dude that had his own thing and like did whatever the fuck he wanted to do, like no real rhyme or reason.
Yeah. But definitely like that idea of like looking super traditional and super.
Oh, it's super cool. Yeah, I mean, you know, him hanging out with the
Well,
Hells
it allows
Angels.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wearing
exactly.
this kind
And
of
I mean,
shit.
it sort of allows you to get away with stuff,
Totally.
It
you
does. It
know?
like adds some credibility, you know. Like I think of like the things I've like the places I've been, man, and the situations I've been in, and I'm like, wow, I wonder if that would have like popped off like that if I wasn't in that shirt. You know?
Right. Right. So
Yeah.
so you told us you
So
traveled a
yeah,
good bit, right? Like kind of out of the
yeah,
country. And
yeah,
how
yeah.
do you feel like, your experiences, which like I'd love to hear a few of the places and whatnot, but like how did seeing other places and cultures and
uh,
things kind of inform both your style and like your political attitude, and just kind of personal journey?
okay, yeah, that's interesting. So I would say there's two trips that do one of those things, maybe both of those things. So when I was like 20, I lived still in Boston. I lived at this Zen temple, and one of the other resident students at the Zen temple was from India, and I moved in say like November. In like December, we were already like fast friends. This dude Bala, he's like still one of my closest friends like in the world. He lives in India now.
Oh
He
shit.
like had to move. Um, but we had been friends for like maybe like a month, and he was like, "I'm going back to India in January. You should come." And I was like, "What?" It never occurred that I should go to India. But I was like, I can remember going home for Christmas and like being like to my parents, I was like, I met this dude from India, and he's like, you should come. I'm going to like visit my family. You should come to India. He like lives at this Zen temple. I was like, should I do it? And my parents were like, yeah, I think you probably should. Like, this is kind of like probably like a once in a lifetime thing. Like, you know, somebody from India.
Hell yeah.
Not you know somebody from India. You probably take a chance if you want to do it. Like, we'll like help you do it. Like, go do it. You know. And so yeah, I like had to get like a visa. I remember it was like such short notice. I had to go to New York to the Indian consulate to like get my visas in person and like come back to Boston. And yeah, I went to India for like a month when I was 20, and I had never been. I'd been out of the country. I'd been to Canada. I'd been to like the West Indies, but not to like the fucking other side of the world, South Asia. Like I just got off the plane in fucking Delhi, and it was like, okay,
Shit.
like, you have truly traveled to the other side of the world. But it was great. It was like one of the best trips, but it was like definitely informed my politics because it was like you're like, okay, other people don't all live exactly like in like the suburbs in a fucking house with like a 2-car garage, and like, you know, the streets ain't all paved.
Right.
Like
Right.
the infrastructure, like, you know, like in India, like at least back then, it was like, you know, you'd walk past something, you'd be like, that looks like it's like from 1945, and you're like, that is from 1945. You know? Like a fan in the airport or like part of the airport or whatever, and it was just like, it was eye-opening, you know, to say the least. You know, my friend's dad was like worked for the government, like, but not like was like some pencil pusher. Like I couldn't even tell you to this day what he did, but we had like a driver
Oh wow.
the entire time.
Jeez.
Yeah.
When you look in like pictures of India, like, at least back then, there's these white cars called ambassadors, that we were like kind of shuttled around in the cities,
Huh.
and then when we would go like from city to city, it would be like a convoy of like jeeps, and like the local dignitaries of that town would like come out with like a basket of sweets and like stuff for like his dad, and like walk him around like the town, and then like have breakfast, and then we would go do whatever we were gonna do.
Oh wow. Yeah,
Like
Wow.
that doesn't sound like the
town
normal Indian visit
no,
experience.
was not the normal trip to India. Like when we would go to like temples, it was like the like priest dudes would come out with like the local dignitaries and like take us to like a special way through the temple. I was like, what is going on?
Wow.
But it was amazing. It was a beautiful trip. Like yeah, I, you know, we would walk down the street in like his hometown, and like somebody he like knew from high school would be like, you got to come in, and like that person's mom would like fix us like whatever kind of food she had to like offer, and like we'd have to sit there and eat for like 20 minutes and they talk. And we'd like walk 10 feet down the road, and some other guy that knew him from elementary school would be like, "Bah, you gotta come in, my mom," and like she would like fix us a meal and we like eat. It was just like a 12-hour day
Oh Jesus.
for a month in India, and it was formative. Because I came back to Boston, and that was what Ralph Nader, the Duke, running for president, and that
Mm.
was the first time I voted. So maybe my years are off, but somewhere around there. And that was the beginning of me being like kind of a super leftist kind of type
Yeah.
person.
So
Yeah,
that
I
pushed you over the edge.
Focus around that time. Do you guys know that book? It's like a Kurt Vonnegut book, but it
What is the
mentions
book?
Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, I know it, but I have not read it.
Yeah, same.
Opens with a Eugene Debs quote, and I read that book, and that Eugene Debs quote. What is it? If there's a lower class, I'm in it. If there's a criminal element, I'm of it. While there's a soul in prison, I am not free. And it just like blew me away, and I just got into like Debs, and I got into like history of like workers in the country, and like that was like a period in Boston where you could like literally walk down the street and like Howard Zinn or fucking Noam Chomsky would walk by.
Right.
Like I
Yeah.
saw Noam Chomsky at MIT. I saw Howard Zinn speak. I think at MIT I saw Cornel West speak in that period. Ralph Nader. It was just like kind of like this. It was just that early Bush years kind
It
of.
was a weird mishmash. Like they were trying to find a unified voice on the left,
Yeah,
and there were voices, and they
yeah,
kept getting shut down, which would
yeah,
sound familiar to our
yeah.
current moment, right?
It's the same fucking shit. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
The more things change, the
It's
more they stay.
And they're so good at it. They're so
yeah,
fucking good
it's
at it.
amazing. Oh yeah, yeah. It's wild.
So
But yeah, that
I
was.
wanted to go. Do you
Go ahead.
go on?
no,
Oh, I was into.
I wanted to ask about the weed trimming in California, and specifically about what it was like to be a young person under the Bush regime, because
It was.
I was under the Bush regime too, but like I was a kid, I was super conscious, but
Yeah,
it didn't affect me, right? I wasn't an adult.
yeah. It's crazy because it's. I'll tell you what's interesting about that. It's interesting to see where weed and everything has come to now, because back then, um, again, it's something that's kind of like not like maybe like jokingly like in the blood. My uncle moved out to California. I was just talking to him the other day in 79, 78-ish.
Hmm.
And he had a friend up in Garberville that was like a real fucking OG. I mean, you're talking about growing in the 70s.
Yeah.
right.
Up there. Super illegal. But when it was just like a fucking real like wild fucking west. Because when I moved out there, it was like wild west.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's still fucking wild as fuck out there. Don't get it fucking wrong. Like that Emerald Triangle is no joke. But yeah, so during the Bush years, it was crazy. I mean, it was just absolutely insane. It was like it was like more gray market than it is now, because there was allegedly medical growing,
Right.
Hmm.
there was allegedly regulations around said medical growing, but it was kind of different everywhere and kind of super gray. Like there was like already kind of that dispensary in San Francisco, but it was still getting raided all the time. That original one, I can't remember what it's called, like Harborside. Like the dude with like he always had like a pork pie hat on with like two long pigtails, kind of like Willie Nelson style. But he would have like
Sounds about right.
and they would just get busted all the time, but they were kind of like real activists about it, so yeah, that was the time. It was like people were growing crazy amounts of weed, but it was like at the same time you would get a phone call. You'd be like at somewhere at a grow, and you get a phone call like we just saw like 7 black SUVs go up like such and such road. and people from that neighborhood would have to fucking ditch in some fucking way or another. The first year I went out there, I still swear to God I have like PTSD from it. I got like my friends were like, "Oh, this guy, he's like an old hippie, he's like real old school, he's cool. He like needs some people up in this town just a little bit away." I'm gonna omit all the pertinent information just because I'm still weird like
Of
that.
course, of course.
Yeah, no
So
worries.
been out to like this land, you know, there's like probably like four of us that are gonna work. No, there was like probably six of us then, right? Like four guys and two girls. And we stopped at this one spot and they're like, okay, this is where the girls trim. I was like, okay, this is a little weird. All right. And then they drive us up like the side of a fucking mountain, like to like it like looks like you're suddenly like you like went to like fucking like Bolivia or something, you know? Like it's just like
Hmm.
where is fucking civilization? We're driving to the middle of fucking nowhere, and we finally like get up this place, and it's like a little more like turfed out. There's like a cabin. There's like a big like kind of like Quonset hut kind of building. And then like kind of like a warehouse kind of tin kind of building. And they're like, we go in there and it's just like racked up with weed, just jammed with fucking weed. Like there's like six dudes. We're gonna trim for like the next 2 weeks or whatever. There's like one kid cooking for us. It's like these two kids from Chicago, these two dudes from England, like a dude from Israel. No, two dudes from Israel, and me and this other American dude. And it was like some shit where one day we're trimming, right? And you just hear like this sound, right? And you're like, what is that? And then, no question, it's the sound of a helicopter. And you're like, huh. And then the helicopter's getting closer. And you're like, that's closer than I've ever heard a helicopter in my fucking entire life. Like I've never and I've like been to air shows where there was a fucking helicopter.
Right.
Helicopter is fucking on top of this fucking building at this point. Like you can see the like little building starting to like shake a little from the fucking helicopter. And one of the dudes gets up and like cracks the door and looks, and the helicopter's just hovering above the fucking building we're in that is rammed with probably 500 pounds of like marijuana in process.
Jesus.
Fuck. And then we all just sit there and stare at each other, and the helicopter gets quieter and quieter and quieter and just goes fucking away. There was this kid there, one of the kids from Chicago running the scene, and he had a backpack on the fucking entire time. It's like a fucking 7 a.m. I see him, he's got a backpack on. 9 at night, he's got a backpack on. Anytime he had a backpack on. And I'm like, why do you always wear that backpack? What's in it? He's like, I was at a scene like a month ago that got raided. And he's like, I was taking a shower and everything was cool. And he's like, and I came out of the shower in flip flops and a towel, and there's black SUVs everywhere, and I started running. And he's like, and I ran into the woods and I kept running, and there was a helicopter following me.
Holy
like,
shit.
He would look up and there would be a helicopter, and he'd run and run and run, and he'd look up and the helicopter was still there. He got into a hollow tree and stood up in there in a towel. He had lost his flip flops at this point. He said it turned from day to night and the helicopter stopped searching. He hung out in the tree until like morning came. He said he like almost froze to death. He said he like walked out until he found a fire road, and he's just in a towel, mind you, barefoot in a towel. Has spent the night
Mm.
overnight in the woods, and he said he walked and walked, and he said finally a pickup truck came along and he flagged it down, and it was some logger who gave him a ride to town, and now he wears a backpack with everything he needs to like survive if he runs.
Holy shit, dude.
Oh,
That's
he's got a go bag.
yeah.
He's got to go back.
That's one of the
And I was
craziest
like,
fucking
wow,
stories.
dude.
Fuck, okay.
That's insane.
Yeah. So that was the early years of that. You know, it was like fucking crazy. It was literally like you were like, it's cool. I'm like making $400 a day to trim this weed.
Right.
But it could
Well,
go wrong at any moment, you know. And it was like, and it was because it was the end of the Bush era. During some of it, it was like they were hyper prosecuting.
Right.
They were like,
yeah.
was like some kind of urgency to it. You know, like they knew it wasn't going to be conservative and
They knew a
maybe
Democrat was going to be elected. Yeah.
yeah, and they were like, we got to fucking roast this shit and make a fucking example. And then, yeah, it was like it changed, and I mean, you couldn't even. Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable to me now, though.
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about it, that wasn't even that long ago. Like,
that was
you
not
know,
long ago at all.
14, 15 years, or you know, maybe a little bit more than that. But like, Jesus Christ,
Yeah,
like just, I
yeah,
mean,
it's
Georgia's going to be the last state in the union to legalize, probably. But you know, like, just think.
No.
I don't know.
There's other states down there.
I don't know, man. Tennessee has medical now. Like, there's a few other, you know, like super red places.
Kentucky and Mississippi.
You would think, right? But like Oklahoma has
Yeah, Oklahoma does too.
Which is like, that's like unfathomable to me, because when I went to Kansas City the first time, my friends told me a story about them driving to fucking Oklahoma, some fucking car full of perfectly good white boys, and they were basically like, if you can avoid it in your fucking life, don't ever go to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It was like, not okay.
I think that's good advice.
Yeah, I was like, when I saw that they had medical in Oklahoma, I was like, I must be misreading this.
Nope.
This is fucking insane.
It's
I have
crazy.
like a mortal fear of the state of Oklahoma.
Right. Dude,
it's one of the few states I haven't been to. Like, I think it's only Oklahoma, South Dakota, and North Dakota I haven't been to, and like, I'm not going to Oklahoma.
No.
No, me neither.
You should probably avoid the Dakotas also. I've never been, but just, you know,
right?
maybe like, I don't
God.
know. There might be a little bit of goodness.
It was like one of the most experiences ever. Also one of the most informative experiences. Like, have you guys ever driven across country?
Yeah.
Like, it's so wild. I think most Americans don't realize, how much of the country is like completely fucking empty. Like, anybody who says anything about overpopulation in this country has never fucked their neighborhood, because that's a fucking insane fucking thought. Like, this country is so fucking vast and 80% fucking empty. And then that, like, most people, I would say, live in a fucking trailer park or like a double wide trailer on like a private piece of land. Once you get outside of any major suburban area on either that is basically on the East Coast or the West Coast.
Right.
Because once you're in, I mean, fuck, man, I can't even think of the places like Wyoming, when I drove across Arizona, like New Mexico. Once you're not in a major area, it's just like sort of some sort of industrial processing plant, series of a couple of houses, a store, a series of double wide trailers.
Yeah.
And then vast expanse of nothing.
Yeah, I mean,
like, that's like a large amount of the United States.
How many states have more cows than people? You know, like there's a handful at least, right. And it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, that's the truly insane thing about the United States. It's like, it's kind of ruled by people not many people who live in a giant empty area.
Right.
We've probably never left that giant empty area.
Oh, dude. Yep.
Oh, God. And they're mad at people who live in crammed populaces who've never been to those giant empty areas.
Right.
God bless America.
Shit, man. Peter, this has been a really fun
So I was going to ask you one more.
I don't know, hearing the stories and everything has been awesome.
I think we've talked about clothes. We've talked about clothes with everything.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, dude.
You know, if you have more to say about clothes, then we are happy to hear it.
Yeah. I mean, as far as this goes,
the one that I was going to ask you. Go on, Matt.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, you know, I feel like Connor and I both had the idea that this is about clothes, at least peripherally, but like it's kind of like the accoutrement of the interview that there's clothing talk. Like it's about the person.
It's the intersection of all of it.
Oh yeah, exactly, exactly.
I think
it's the intersection of all of it, and so like
I don't want to talk about Alan Fletcher's How to Dress a Man. You know, I want to talk about how Peter likes to wear a button-up shirt while he's tattooing. You know, like that's the kind of shit that I want to get into.
Right. Well, how Peter goes mountain climbing in khakis.
Exactly.
Like, that's the info that we wanted.
Yep.
And so I'm going to ask you now, as a man with many plaids, what is your favorite plaid?
Ooh, I mean, it's gotta be, what is it? Black Watch.
Mine too. Yeah.
There's no contest. No contest.
Good call, dude.
That's like kind of like that's like my
there's no
that's
competition.
Nah.
Yeah, that's like a family inside joke in my family. Like we all wear that.
Plaid's so good, it has its own name.
Yep. Right? I mean, it's just Black Watch in particular is such an easy thing to wear. Like it goes with with basically everything. It doesn't make you look like a fucking 70s game show host. It's just it's just solid, man. I think
it's understated. It's understated. It's very strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would be in the Black Watch camp as my favorite also.
It's no one can argue.
No.
Well, we want to thank you a ton for being on the show. I don't want to take you away from your life.
Yeah.
I think that this has been a very, very good interview, and I'm sure that you will see us around. I was going to give you a chance to pitch whatever you wanted.
I don't really have
if you want.
Yeah. Well, shout out to your tattoo Instagram at least.
You can spend the most contests, you know. I think that's kind of the thing that worries me in menswear these days. I feel like when I started in menswear, it was like really oriented toward. It wasn't about, you know, look at this rich guy's wardrobe, which I sometimes feel like it is now.
Yeah.
You know, like I started out with things like put this on and an affordable wardrobe and that kind of thing. And it really was about like street etiquette.
Of course.
It's about like thrifting, you know. And there was some transition point where it kind of just became like pictures of the like some like rich like industrialist like wardrobe, and it's like, yeah, well, if you could spend, you know, $80,000 a year on clothing, you're gonna look probably pretty fucking fantastic, I won't lie. But I don't think that's very fun, you know.
No, dude. Not at all.
No.
And I don't think it's very like democratic, you know, or very fair. And I think that's like what I like to see in menswear is like people who are like, you know, they look sharp as fuck, but it's not just because they went and like rammed up their credit card and are gonna have to sell it in 6 months because they fucking really couldn't afford it to begin with.
Exactly.
That's my final thought.
Into it.
Yeah. Long live.
Well, Matt.
In an affordable wardrobe.
Yes.
Yeah, which is a great blog. A cute style is a good one.
I haven't looked at that dude's stuff in forever, but he was always super chill and style for him. So I need to revisit.
And just a good idea. Here's an outfit for under $100.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Well, right. Peter, what's your tattoo?
Well,
cool. Well, it was excellent to hear from you, man.
Yeah.
Cheers. Anytime.
Absolutely. Signing off.
Yes. Ciao.